Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and welcome to the program Tawhid in the Creation, exploring the book The Essentials of Tawhid, book 3 in the series, authored by Budasadi Mani. My name is Muhammad Fasih Peterson, and on the line, I'm joined by Budasadi. Budasadi, assalamu alaikum, and welcome to the show once again.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Muhammad Fasih and the listeners out there.
Alhamdulillah, a pleasure having Budasadi with us, and tonight we will once again be engaging on matters that are geared towards developing and growing our tawheed, inshallah. Now, last week we explored the malaika, and particularly an incident that took place where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had instructed the angels, or had virtually communicated to the angels that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was going to create man. And there was this interaction between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the angels around us, and this is mentioned in the Quran. So, but Sali, that's where we left off last week, and I believe that there is another part to the verse that we did not mention, and that's going to lead into who and what we are going to be speaking about this evening, inshallah. So I leave it to Budasali to introduce this part of the program. Tafadhal mashkura.
Shukran, Muhammad Fasih. As you've mentioned, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says and explains to us in detail what happened in chapter 2, verse 30 of the Holy Quran. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created humankind, Allah informed the angels about that. And I'm not going to repeat what we said last week, but then at the end of that process, Allah instructed the malaika to prostrate to Nabi Adam. And they all, and I will read the actual verse. When we, Allah speaking to us, when we said to the angels, prostrate yourselves to Adam, they prostrated all except Iblis. He was one of the jinn who grew arrogant and was one of the rejectors. So now enters, we've just been created, and now we've had our first experience with Iblis. We weren't born yet, but our ruhs were born, and Iblis, or Shaitan as we will refer to him, is what we will be speaking about from this point onwards. Now, I'm going to just mention that our topic for tonight will be on discussing Iblis or Shaitan, and whatever questions might arise out of that, to clarify some misunderstandings and to make sure that we have a better idea of who and what Shaitan actually is, Muhammad Fasih.
Now, Budasali, why is it important for us to know who Shaitan is? Why is it important for us to know the story of Shaitan and how he came to be a force in the dunya, in the life of mankind?
Yeah, Muhammad Fasih, our purpose on earth is different. In fact, Shaitan and jinn, jinn kind and mankind are the only two types of creation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave choice to. Everything else in the entire creation do not have the ability to choose. Allah instructs them and they obey exactly the way Allah would want them to. They've got no say of whether they want to or not, but Allah gave that quality to jinn and to mankind. So jinn's role falls in the category of us having to decide between whatever we're going to exercise our choice on. Allah sent us the Quran and the Sunnah on the one side, and on the other side, Allah created Shaitan. Allah could have prevented him from coming into existence or left him out from having an influence over us, but his role is there to test us. And the nafs Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also created as another thing, and the attractions and temptations of the dunya, those three work together to exercise influence over us or try and attract us towards evil or away from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So shaitan has a very important role as part of this test for humankind to determine whether they're going to go to the left or to the right. And that is, in essence, what his role is, Muhammad Fasir.
Now, but Asadi mentioned that shaitan is from the jinn kind. And the question is obviously, so how do we then okay, basically there is this concept in other faiths of shaitan being a fallen angel. In other words, he was an angel who was in the company of the angels, and then he went against the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and subsequently he was expelled. So therefore he's a fallen angel, an angel that was rejected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But however, when we're saying that he is that shaitan is actually of the jinn, then we are saying he's an entirely different creation that doesn't fall in the category of malaika at all. Am I correct in saying that? Because there is that misconception, I think, in our community, where people might think that shaitan actually was from the malaika.
Yeah, I think, Muhammad Fasih, the problem arises in the way that people interpret the Quranic verse that says Allah addressed the angels and told them to prostrate, and everyone did except Iblis. So they read it to say that means that Allah didn't address Iblis separately. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addressed the angels. Now, this is something that even the scholars in Islam, not just other faiths, but the scholars in Islam have different views on. The general accepted view is based on what is not mentioned in that verse, and that it says that they, the angels, prostrated all except Iblis. Then Allah says he was of the jinn. So there Allah makes a distinction. Although Allah addressed the angels, Allah said except Iblis, and he was of the jinn. Allah clarified that for us. So that would be the first point. The second point of why he was not an angel, and which make the proof of it is that we all know that Iblis is made of fire. Shaitan is made of fire. He's not made of clay like human beings or nur as the malaika. So his creation is different from ours. And the malaika, if Allah instructs them prostrate, they can only prostrate. They've got no choice. If he was an angel, he would not have been able to disobey the instruction of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the fact that he exercised his choice, and further on, we all know that it's mentioned in many places that the only two forms of creation which were given, free will and choice, was mankind and jinn. They have choice. So he could not have been a fallen angel in the way that the Christians believe, or that some other people might believe. I mean, the proof is quite clear, and the majority view is of the jinn, and he was not a malaika.
the voice of Buddhisani Mani. This is the program Tawhid Negation, exploring the book, The Essentials of Tawhid, Book 3 in the series. And when we come back after this break, inshallah, we will continue. Stay tuned. Buddhisani, where do we go from here?
So now he's supposed to play that role. How does he actually, or do you want to say now, what, other than being of the jinn kind and made from fire, we can speak more about, do we know what he looks like? Can we see him? What form does he have? Do we know anything about that? Or we could go to, does he have power over us? Because we all say, no, Shaitan forced me to do this. I didn't want to, but Shaitan forced me to do this. Does he really have that power? Does he have his own power to make you do things? Did Allah give him that? Or is it not so? I suppose that would be the next one.
Inshallah, Amin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome back to the program Tawhid Negation, exploring the book The Essentials of Tawhid, Book 3 in the series, authored by Buddhisani Mani. Tonight we are continuing our discussion from last week. We've begun this narrative, or rather we're expanding on this narrative in the Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addressed the angels, and after they had questioned Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about the creation of man, and then afterwards Allah created man, and Allah taught man the names, divine names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as we understand it. And then there was the command for the malaika to prostrate, and then Shaitan, who was present, did not prostrate. And as Salis mentioned, Shaitan is of the jinn. It is described that he is of the jinn. So now we're talking about Shaitan, and as decided also, also in our interaction, what we understand is that it's important for us to know Shaitan is, because at the end of the day, Shaitan has influence over our lives, and we'll talk exactly about how he has influence, and it's important for us to know how to build up our defenses, inshallah. So Badasani, the question then is, what type of influence does Shaitan have over mankind? Because we hear about the wiswas, the whisperings of Shaitan. So, but what influence does he really have over man? And then the question is, can man then be blamed for his sins if Shaitan is whispering to him and encouraging him to do wrong, in a sense?
Muhammad Fasih, the time when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expelled, must remember, Shaitan roamed freely as a respected, honored inhabitant of amongst the angels before this. Then he was expelled. When he was expelled, he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to not punish him immediately, but to give him reprieve. And what he wanted to do, he said, this great thing that you created, Allah, is not so great as I am, because he was a very, very firm believer before this. He believed in Allah, and he was honored amongst the malaika. And he said, humankind is not so great. I will be able to distract them if you allow me to prove to you. Then Allah gave him that reprieve. Now, we must interpret this correctly. It must be taken with what we just mentioned earlier, Muhammad Fasih, that Allah created us as human beings to be tested with choice. Good on the one side, bad on the other side, and Allah puts us in the middle. Iblis forms part of the bad, which will try and distract us away from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he didn't come up with something that Allah didn't intend anyway to do. This is only for us to understand that his creation was part of the divine plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but so that we can understand it in the form of a happening that happened in the world of the angelic world. So he wants to prove his superiority over us. And one of the ways he does this, he whispers to you. He insinuates things to you that is bad. He doesn't always say, go do the bad. He says it in a way that it's easy for you to fall in the trap of what he is saying. Often we have thoughts in our mind, and you almost have this feeling that there's two sides in you. You're struggling with yourself. Some people call it, I've been struggling with myself. Should I do this or should I do that? Now that is one of the ways that Shaitan's whisperings affect us, because he puts things in your mind. Say, for example, you want to go make salah. Then, and you are busy with something that you either enjoy doing or you want to complete it, then he will say to you, no, why don't you just complete this? You're going to forget what you did, and you're still in the waqt, you can still go make salah. You will whisper it in such a way where it's easy enough for him to persuade you to do it. And so often we do that. We get persuaded by him. That two voices in your head, the one voice is Shaitan. The one voice is Shaitan. And it's his method. Now comes the question, of course, does he only whisper? That's the other question, Muhammad Fasih.
So, Brother Salih, then following that question, and where this question leads, when we talk about influence, and we talk about whispering, and encouraging one to do wrong, one might say, well, okay, so if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows for shaitan to mislead mankind, then certainly how can mankind be responsible for the actions if shaitan is there as an agitator? So how do we understand his role in the broader context, especially since shaitan's whole desire after asking Allah for reprieve was to show that mankind would become ungrateful for what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon him?
Yeah, Muhammad Fasih, in fact, we will touch on this later on as well. But if somebody comes to you, or let's put Shaitan just on the back burner for a while and just talk generally now, and say somebody comes to you and he says, why don't you break into that house? There's no one there. And you break in and the police catch you and you go to court. Can you go and say to the magistrate, the reason why I broke into this house is because a friend suggested to me that I should break in. He wasn't even with. You went in, you broke in. You want to blame the person who suggested to you, but you did the breaking in. Do you understand? I mean, it gives you a glimpse of Shaitan's role. He doesn't break in himself. In fact, he can't even force you. Shaitan does not have power where he can force you to do it. He doesn't grab hold of your body and take control of your hands and your mind and whatever. He just whispers to you and says, why don't you do that? You can get away with it. there's lots of money there, nobody is present, it's dark or whatever, um, then he stands back. Now it's up to you to exercise your choice. If you follow him, then you have executed the bad deed yourself. But we must remember, Muhammad Fasih, Allah's not unfair. Allah also gives us angels, as we said previously in the previous session or two. We spoke about the malaika. Allah also gives you malaika, not only the two who record your deeds. Allah gives you other malaika that's always around you, and they also whisper to you. They also whisper to you and try and influence you to do the good. Now, if you take a left and a right ear, then you have the good coming in and the bad coming in, and you are in the middle. Who makes the choice? The person who makes the choice to do whatever it is the one that will be held responsible on the day of Qiyamah.
And Buddhisali, so when we talk about this, so is Buddhisali then referring to the conscience of the person? Because when someone does intends to do something bad, on the one side they have this desire and this pull to want to do something, but on the other side there's this sense of, I'm going to get punished for this, or I'm going to be in trouble if I do this, or I shouldn't be doing this. That other component is precisely saying that component, or that component of one's conscience rather, is the malaika that is trying to influence one to do the good and stay away from the bad.
Yeah, Muhammad Fasih, we refer to it as the conscience. But in fact, that's the battle that takes place in your heart. The influence of the malaika on your heart for you to follow the good, and shaitan's influence on your heart to do the bad settles on your heart. Then your brain tries to get the direction from you now. Which one are you going to follow so that I can instruct the hand to break the window? The mind is waiting on you to decide. Are you going to follow the left or the right? So that we refer to it as our conscience, but it's in fact the influence that these things have on the state of our hearts. If the heart is in fact a bad heart, it's a dirty heart, it's a black heart, then whatever the malaika says will struggle to push out the bad thoughts. It's an easy place for the bad thoughts to settle in, and then the body just does what the heart is filled with. So in a sense, what I've tried to capture was that what we refer to as our conscience is, in most cases, it is the influence of the malaika that's there to assist and inspire and guide you. But you ultimately make the choice. You decide. No matter how loud they say it, you are the one that makes the actual choice.
The voice of Buddhisani Mani. This is the program Tawhid and the Creation, exploring the book The Essentials of Tawhid. And tonight we are looking at the influence that shaitan and the functions that shaitan has in misleading mankind, why, or rather how he does, and also we'll be speaking about what we can do to build up our defenses against shaitan, inshallah. Ameen. When we come back after this break, we will continue. Stay tuned. Mirsali, where do we go from here, inshallah?
Yeah. Now, where is he? Where is shaitan? I mean, can one see shaitan? Are there times when we can see him? Or is he always not visible? Or is he visible but we can't see him? And what does he do to make it easier for you to do the wrong and prevent you from doing it? Apart from the whispering, what else does he do? But more kind of focusing on what kind of entity is he. you know.
Okay, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome back to the program Tawhid and the Creation, exploring the book The Essentials of Tawhid, book 3 in the series, authored by Budasani Mani. Tonight we are looking at the influence that shaitan has over mankind and understanding how shaitan attempts to influence mankind and his deeds, and whether or not he'll be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether or not he will be whether mankind will be dutiful to his Lord or not. That is how he impacts mankind. That's what we're actually exploring. So tonight, but certainly the other question that I think is very important is, um, when we talk about shaitan, one might ask the question, so where is shaitan?
Mm.
And also, one might ask the question, uh, is shaitan visible to mankind, or does he also form part of the ghaib or the unseen?
Okay, Muhammad Fasih. Firstly, shaitan is the head of a species that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created. He is somebody that's in charge of a group, the shayateen, and it's referred to that they, in the plural form, they are of the jinn kind, referred to as the shayateen, but shaitan has disciples. He doesn't only have, there isn't just one shaitan. There are many, many other of the jinn who form part of the disciples of shaitan. Now, just to make a point, and I don't want to really not touch on the detail of jinn, because that is a very, very controversial topic, especially on the air. But I do want to say he is of the jinn kind. But you get Muslim jinn and you get non-believers. So they have choice. They have to worship Allah like we. They also procreate. They do many things that's similar to what we do as human beings. But they were created long before we came into existence. Long before we came into existence. Shaitan, the jinn, roamed the planet Earth. Now, it's important to know that their existence forms part of a realm that is outside the material world. Our eyes can only see what is material. The eyes, we know how the eyes work. You can only see something if light is reflected off that object. The light enters your eyes and then it's sent to the brain, and then the brain interprets that as whatever it is that the light is being reflected from. These people have a different form. It's not material. It's not a solid material substance that they are created from, like human beings. We made from flesh and bone. You can touch it. Now, they are invisible to the human eye, but there are times when they can take the form, especially of animals, and then they appear in the material world in the form of animals, and they can be recognized as shaitan. And some of the prophets and the awliya, they have been given the ability to see into the ghaib, so they can see this. And occasionally, very occasionally, then people are given the ability to see these objects, but it's very rare. It's very rare. People who are not necessarily awliya or prophets are given the ability. But to summarize the point, Muhammad Fasih, is there are invisible beings made of what Allah refers to as from smokeless fire. It's a fire that doesn't burn in the way that we see fire burn. You have to take something and you have to ignite it, and then it burns and you get the smoke and the heat coming out. Theirs is an existence that's difficult to describe. Um, they've been given a form that is linked to fire, which is one of the reasons why they thought, or Shaitan thought, that he was superior to man. Man was made from dust and clay, and he thought he was made of fire. So that is where the arrogance comes from. So how can something that's been made of clay and fire be so superior that I must go and bow down and prostrate to him? No, Allah, I am superior to him. So I will distract him and divert him from you to prove to you that I am more superior than humankind. But in short, he's an invisible entity, and can take the form of animals, but he can see you. You can't see him, but he can see you and he can follow you. Nothing prevents him from seeing and trying to follow you and do things that can influence you in whatever way he wishes to do it. But he's not one. That point we must remember. He's got disciples, and his disciples do his bidding, or he sometimes does it himself. Muhammad Fasih.
Now, but Sani, the other thing that I think also might be important to address is the fact that, so we understand that Shaitan's role is to mislead mankind and to take them down the path of being ungrateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to be displeasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in their actions. So when we look at Shaitan's role, and we look at the fact that he has the ability to whisper and to try and influence mankind, what defenses has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala given mankind to be able to challenge, or at least to protect oneself against the influence of Shaitan? What mechanisms has Allah given mankind to be able to protect himself?
One of the known very powerful methods of fighting Shaitan has been given to us in the form of the Ayatul Kursi, by Rasulullah and by other very pious predecessors of ours, that the Ayatul Kursi is one of the most powerful weapons. But you can't just recite it without knowing its understanding. If you want to get the full benefit of that, you have to do it. But even if you don't understand the full meaning of it, it's better to recite it than not to recite it. But recite it as a means of protection. And one of the other ways, for example, you know that when we make salah, you must be still, you must be focused. But sometimes Shaitan, especially when you are doing good things, is at his worst. Now he doesn't leave you. You are trying to now, the salah is the one time when you are standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now he's desperate to distract you. And how successful isn't he? Eh? If you look at all of us, I include myself, how successful is he to divert your thoughts and your mind to worldly things and things that's other than Allah? Now, one of the methods that's, if you feel that this is Shaitan that's attacking you while you're doing this, then you can softly in your mind say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Oh Allah, protect me from the accursed Shaitan. And you spit three dry spits on your left shoulder. Not loud and not wet. People around you get another ablution. It's a soft thing, and it is intended because he's invisible. And you are invoking Allah's support and assistance. So it is to get the desired effect rather than the actual action. So you say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. You ask and invoke Allah's protection. And those are two of the ways. And the other way, of course, that is also is the three cools. It's a very powerful way of protecting yourself from the influence of shaitan, because the moment you invoke Allah, then he runs away. And the moment you don't, he tries to, what is referred to by some of the scholars, he tries to devour your heart. He tries to take over every space within your heart, to take control of the heart. But the moment you invoke the name of Allah through dhikr or reflection or anything like that, then he runs away, because he knows that this is not something that he can do anything about. Muhammad Fasih.
But Asani, then also, when we talk about shaitan, and we've now mentioned the influences that he has over man, how does one understand the role that shaitan plays? Because again, it's so easy for man to say, well, shaitan made them do it. Shaitan made them commit the sin. We always hear people say, "As bliss, man." But
Yeah.
certainly, man has been given free will and choice in terms of what he wants to do. So, how does one address someone who says, "No, it's just iblis"? Because obviously, yes, iblis has a role, shaitan has a role in the deeds that the evil deeds that man commits. However, as Batasari has mentioned, he's only whispering. It's only the wiswas. He doesn't make the person do the deed.
Yeah, Muhammad Fasih, he is such a clever entity that he knows that. And Allah speaks about it in the Quran, that on the day of Qiyamah, we will use that as an excuse. Allah, I really tried, but Iblis didn't want to leave me alone. He tried to force me to do X, Y, and Z. And this is the Quranic verse, chapter 14, verse 22. And we're not going to read the whole thing, just the one part that's relevant to what we're saying. This is Iblis saying this. So do not blame me, but blame yourselves. I cannot be called to your aid, nor can you be called to my aid. Indeed, I deny your association of me with Allah. Indeed, for the wrongdoers is a painful punishment. He, in fact, says that. You people who did wrong, there's a painful punishment waiting for you. Don't blame me. I didn't do it. You did it yourself. So don't turn to me for help. Now, one of the things that we must remember, Fasih, is that he doesn't only whisper for you to do something wrong. For example, what he does is, he can, for example, if you want to make salah, he can put suggestions in your mind that prevents you from making salah at all. One of the things would be, you're not ready yet, man. Try and pull yourself together first, because when you make salah, you must make it continuously. And many people get fooled by that kind of argument, and that's great. So now you don't make salah, he's achieved his objective. But now, if he can't prevent you, no, you're going to make salah, no, I can't miss my salah, you want to make salah, then the next thing he tries is to get you to postpone it or delay it, hoping that if you postpone it for long enough or delay, then the waqt is going to be gone and you will have missed it. He couldn't stop you from doing it at all because you wanted to do it. Then there's other things that he also does. He whispers to you that in your mind, now, if you think of what he's saying to you, think of what you referred to earlier as the subconscious. What thoughts come into your mind? He whispers to you, you've really been doing a lot of good in your life. You're making salah, and you do it now with almost to show the person who knew you from before that you are now a steadfast musalli. And you do it now with show and ostentation. And he does different things depending on who he is busy with. So he doesn't use one method of just saying, stop, don't do it, or go and break in the house. He uses different methods depending on the circumstances to get you to do whatever he wants, as long as you can stay away from doing things that's pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that he can actually say, I've succeeded in showing you, Allah, that these people are not grateful and they are not better than me. Muhammad Fasih.
The voice of Bulisani Mani. This is the program Tawhid and the Creation, exploring the book The Essentials of Tawhid. Tonight we are looking at the influences of Shaitan and the origins of Shaitan in terms of going right back to when man was created. Subhanallah. Bulisani, I think that's where we're going to have to leave it for this show, inshallah. But I want to say a big shukran for joining us this evening.
Muhammad Fasih, shukran very much for giving me the opportunity to be here. And I just want to leave a parting message for all the listeners. Don't say in a mechanical way, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Say it with more understanding and more presence of heart, and ask Allah to protect you and your family under all circumstances. Even when things are going well, always try and include that as part of your protection, because Shaitan is extremely clever. He knows you better than you know yourself, and he will use a psychology that is befitting you. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect all of us from the accursed Shaitan.
Ameen.
And strengthen our iman and taqwa, so that we can know how to fight him under all the different circumstances that we are confronted with, Muhammad Fasih.
Bulisani, once again, a big shukran for joining us, and all the best. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Muhammad Fasih, and all the listeners out there.
And if you'd like a copy of the book, The Amazing, the Big Bang, The Amazing Human Body, or the book, The Essentials of Tawhid, or any other books in the series, you're welcome to visit www.salimani.co.za, and you can navigate onto the tab where the books are and download any of the books in PDF format, inshallah. Well, from myself, Muhammad Fasih, peace until I speak to you again, inshallah. Abadi wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and have a safe evening further.